Peace and love, family. How is everyone doing tonight? Thank you for joining us on another edition of the RAM Book Club, Resurgence of the African Mind, where we seek to liberate African minds by reading one unit of work at a time. Of course, family, you know, we have been reading The Blueprint for Black Power by Amos Wilson, the big dog, halfway through, family. Actually, we're a little bit more than halfway through. Like, we've been pushing through. It's literally almost been 6 months that we've been reading this book. We've been very dedicated, and I'm very proud to have been a part of this. Last week, family, we read chapter 20, The Myth of the Market Economy and Black Power. We talked a little bit about the African-American economic ideology. We also talked about a little bit of lessons in history and self-defeating economics. This week, family, we are going to be talking about a nation within a nation, chapter 21. We're going to cover the African-American community, separate and unequal as a de facto third world nation. Well, yeah, okay. I just combined the two, but yeah. We're also going to be talking about the advantages of the African-American nation and an economic proposal to the African-American community. I am Lily LaPoete Speaks, also Alima Njai. You can get the links to join the panel or to watch in this discussion below at www.lilylapoetespeaks.com. I'm the author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1. You can get your copy while you're there, family. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to let the panel introduce themselves. Peace and love.
Oh, gotta show your book, sis. Gotta show it because you never have it on point. So you ever have it with you. So I gotta show you. This is her book right here, Perceptions of a Misplaced African. Yes, sis. But peace and power, family. My name is Dr. Deanna Bailey, also known as Dr. Oya. I am the co-founder of Ed Anime Productions, the executive producer of Meltrek. Meltrek, which is a hip-hop animated series that teaches children African history from an African perspective. If you're interested in teaching your child authentic African history, just get them Meltrek. Google Meltrek in the search engine, and all the links to purchase the animation will pop up. We also have color and activity books available, story books available, and unit plans for parents who homeschool or even parents who just wish to ingrain the information, you know, within their children. So we have unit plans available, books, color and activity books, films. So again, just go to Google Meltrek, and all of the links to purchase it will pop up. As Sister Lily LaPoete said, we are halfway. We're more than halfway through Blueprint for Black Power. This is a 868-page book, and we're on page 503. So you know, I'm very excited, you know, about this. I mean, the sister and I have been talking about reading this book, and we decided to put a group together and do it, and we did it and stayed committed to it. And so I mean, we've learned a whole lot. Like last week, we discussed the European economic worldview, and I thought that was very, very powerful. So if you didn't get the opportunity to check that out, please go in the archives. Again, you can go to lilylapoetespeaks.com and find a link. You know, you can watch it from there. Click on the link, watch it from there. It's going to direct you right to the YouTube. You know, just go to YouTube search engine, type in, you know, RAM Book Club chapter 20, and that'll pop up. But that was a powerful discussion last week. I'm looking forward to this discussion this week, chapter 21, Nation Within a Nation, which is something that Amos Wilson has stressed throughout the book, that we as African people need to conceive of ourselves as a nation within a nation and function as such. And so I'm looking forward to this discussion. I read the chapter. It's very, very powerful. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to the other panel members. Sister Camille?
Peace, family. Enili Kuabo, which means hello and welcome. My name is Camille Gaynor-Jones. And each week it is my honor to be a part of the weekly programming and to sit on the illustrious panel with the family and those in the chat. I'm a professional drummer, producer, an educator, and a clinician. And you know, you can check me out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Looking forward, you know, to getting into this next chapter that our ancestor Amos Wilson had the foresight to formulate for us, so we can start to the reemergence of the African mind, and you know, implement some of these tools and ideas and concepts in our communities. And thank you for tuning in. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe.
Resurgence of the African mind. Here we are, ready to get this started. Dr. Maat, I was practicing how to pronounce this word. Abibi Afodie.
Abibi Afodie.
Thank you. All right. So that's how I'm greeting the family tonight. Hotep, peace and Black power. Most definitely. My name is Impu Haru. Also known, my government name is Andre Lyons. I'm just here to, and we do give honor to the ancestors, certainly Baba Wilson, and ready to jump in, nation within a nation. Peace, family.
Peace.
Good evening, family. Brother T. Rolo, known as Brother T. Always excited about being on our, excited about being on our panel. Today we are definitely discussing chapter 20, and I'm looking forward. Thank you for all who are looking and joining us on our journey.
Fantastic. Well, we're missing another panel member, brother Travis. I know on Facebook his name is brother. I want to say it's Shimsu, right?
Yes.
Yes, brother Shimsu. I miss him. So that brother's a very, very busy brother. But I definitely want to shout him out. He's also a panel member on the RAM Book Club. So definitely want to just acknowledge our brother, even though he's not here. Just want to acknowledge him. But let's get started, Sister Lily.
Yes.
Nation within a nation. But before we get started, sis, I just want to, as a tin cat, Dr. Amos Wilson has been talking about a nation within a nation throughout the book. For example, if you would turn really quickly with me to page 51, that's when he starts talking about it. At the bottom of page 51, he says the Black American nation within a nation. And he says that a well-organized, socially coherent, and cohesive nation states provide the best means for the accumulation and exercise of collective power resources. To the degree that a social group can approach nation state. So he's saying that a social group can approach nation state status even on an informal, non-declared level. All right, you know how the Moors, no disrespect, but they're like, we're Moors and we got the, But he's saying, look, even on an informal, non-declared level, he said it can create, accumulate, and maximally utilize its collective resources as media of its social power and will. He says that the failure of the African American economic and political power, despite its large population and broad national expanse, as well as ample human and material resources, is directly linked to its failure to conceive of itself as a nation within a larger white American dominated nation and to organize itself as such. So he talks about a nation again on page 80, where he says that he gives the Nation of Islam as an example at the bottom of, I believe it's page 81, I'm sorry. And he talks about the Nation of Islam, and he said that they are a great example of a nation, of a group of people functioning as a nation of a nation. And he says that they include all the major institutions that are necessary, right? So he says that they have a group identity and name. So he's given all the components, right? All of the components that you need in order to function as a nation. He said one is a great group, a group identity and name, a religious institution unique to themselves, family and economic institutions, a military or paramilitary establishment, a distinct system of ethics, mores, folkways, and values, distinct modes of dress, distinct culinary and dietary styles, a system of production and resource ownership and development. All right. So he lists those components. And then lastly, on page 141, he talks about white folks, right? Page 141, under the section entitled The White Elite Power Structure in the White American Nation Within a Nation. He says that the white nation within a nation is practically always misidentified as synonymous with the United States as a whole, but both its white and non-white citizens and by the peoples and governments of other nations. All right, so he goes further. He goes on to say that America is inherently a white country in character and in structure and in culture. He said, needless to say, Black Americans create lives of their own. Yet as a people, they face boundaries and constrictions set by the white majority. He said Americans' version of apartheid, while lacking overt legal sanctions, comes closest to the system even now being reformed and the land. So he's saying that, you know, that's a misnomer to even call it a United States when it's really a white country. He's saying that the white folks function as a nation within a nation. So even though they may push multiculturalism on us and integration on us, they themselves function as a nation within a nation. Right. So Sister Alima, go ahead, sister, and kick off chapter 21. I just wanted to do sort of like a quick little recap of what Dr. Amos Wilson spoke about regarding us functioning as a nation within a nation.
Okay, I was gonna go to 504, but the first three are just quotes that I didn't feel there was nothing stuck out at me unless somebody needed to touch on any.
That quote by
I'm good.
Kenneth Clark is tough. That quote by Kenneth Clark is tough though. That first one, that first paragraph.
Okay, go ahead and read it, brother, because I
you don't mind. Okay. The dark ghetto's invisible walls have been erected by the white society, by those who have power, both to confine those who have no power and to perpetuate their powerlessness. The dark ghettos are social, political, educational, and above all, economic colonies. Their inhabitants are subject peoples, victims of the greed, cruelty, insensitivity, guilt, and fear of their masters. So, I mean, nothing that we don't know, but I just, in the moment when I was studying, it just kind of jumped off the page. So I just thought I'd share.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was a powerful quote myself.
Yeah. This is the first time I've seen Bobby Wilson put like three quotes before any chapter, and it kind of stuck out to me as well. I think each one kind of just resonates its own power and letting us know the situation in hand and how we need to gain the nation within the nation. So, I mean, that's the first time I've seen it happen. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Sis, where you at, sis?
I'm right here, Queen.
All right. At page 504.
I honestly didn't have much on 504 either. To me, a lot of it is reiterations in this chapter. So I don't even know if I'm the best one to kick it off. I do have some things highlighted. The most important things to me were the bullets. You know what I mean? But a lot of it was reiterations.
Yeah, and she's 100% correct. A lot of it is reiteration. On page 504, the section is called The African American Community, Separate and Unequal. So he's talking about how he's talking about the culture of inequality and how we are segregated. Not only segregated, you know, I'm talking about not only with respect to housing, because I mean, we do, like in Maryland, we're very segregated with the exception of, I believe, like Columbia, Brother T, you got to Columbia, everybody kind of lives together. But, you know, when you get in Baltimore, you can pretty much tell, like, okay, the Hispanics live right here in Fells Point.
Exactly.
You know, the black folks live over here, the white folks live over there. So he's not talking about just in housing. He's talking about even just the economy is
right.
Yeah,
remember why each one of those communities were built, correct?
What happened, Brother T?
I said, and just you have to understand why you mentioned Columbia. Why Columbia was built? It was built after the 1960, when you had the Love Supreme Court ruling, when you had interracial marriages. So that community was built for interracial couples. When you look at Columbia, if you look at the history of Columbia. So, I mean, when he talked about segregation, you know, once again, based off a court ruling, a community was built. So, I mean, it's just something to look into when you look at segregation in this sense on 504.
Absolutely. And the only thing that I have highlighted here is that at the bottom where he says that the failure of the African American community, along with its cadre of activists, leadership establishment, and intelligentsia, to recognize the community as constituting the nation within the nation and to operate as such, is the primary overarching reason for the relative powerlessness of Africans in America, the Africans in the world. An agglomeration of individuals and small, unstable groups. He said, and I had this underlined, he said, an agglomeration of individuals in small, unstable groups can never wield power of an organized, cooperative, coordinated, consciously and subconsciously self-identity. He says that the African community is a house divided against itself.
That's right.
So that's what I have on page.
That's what I had.
504.
Like literally just about the same thing.
Yeah, like you said, nothing much.
Nothing much, right?
Yeah, and then
to the bottom.
505, he moves on to say that, you know, the African American community, I'm at the bottom of 504, the African American community's nakedness before its enemies is due to its failure of vision and will to clothe itself and shield its loins with the armor of nationhood. He said its failure to protect its fleshy part with the sword and shield and hard cast African-centered consciousness and racial solidarity. It has for too long dangerously denied the reality of its exclusion from full participation in the predominant white American nation within the nation, as well as a nation. He goes on to say that its principal source of powerlessness is its obtuse refusal to conceptually and socially utilize the perception of as a nation within a nation, and thus utilize its to its advantage as its major instrument of power. So Dr. Amos Wilson is saying, look, you guys are already segregated. You guys are already ostracized. You might as well use that to your benefit and begin building your own nation.
That's right.
But instead, we just follow in our powerlessness. So he goes on to talk about approaches to resolving problems. He says that the principal conceptual instruments that African-American thinkers and problem solvers, Dr. Amos Wilson is big on, can you solve your problem? I mean, he talks about, you know, like leadership. He talks about, you know, our different educational institutions. He talks about degrees, and he's like, what good is it if we cannot solve our own problem? So he's saying here that the African community have been handed those handed down to them by the liberal intellectual establishment, which represents the interest of the white American nation. Consequently, the use of these instruments and their analytical outcomes almost invariably lead to the victim blaming conclusion that the sources of all problems of the African American community are either due to the aggregation of individual inabilities, capabilities, lacks, impairments, deficiencies, errant motives, drives, weaknesses, values, pathologies. I hear echo, y'all. Like I don't know who is that. Chaos, please. I hear echo. All right. So anyway, inabilities, capabilities, lacks, impairments, deficiencies, errant motives, and drives, family weaknesses, values, pathologies, disruptions, institutional insufficiencies, and dysfunctions. Okay. So he's basically saying here that, you know, that our thinkers and our problem solvers, when we try to solve our problems, we think of solutions that have been given to us by white liberals in a sense. And most of the time, he said it's like a victim blaming thing where they'll blame it on, you know, again, the whole list that I just named, you know, but yeah, the whole list that I named. So that was that. So he says, he ends with saying, while other analysts may with sound reasons point the finger of blame at racists. So they have some people who say, well, it's racist. Structural dynamics, the hegemony, right? The dominance of white American nation, they will all but ignore the structural dynamics of the African American community and its organizational vulnerability to racism. This is the principle. This is principally the result of their stimulus-bound and reactionary belief that the African American community is hopelessly dependent on the white American community, is incapable of self-determination, and therefore must await the favorable transformation of white racist attitudes, behaviors, and social structural dynamics before it could be rescued from its problems. So that's all I have. I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic. I could keep going, but I'll go ahead and pass the mic.
I had that too, Queen. And then the next paragraph, I started in the middle where it says, while social structural approaches to these issues, which are the aforementioned, are much broader in their analytical range, their analysis of the overall national dynamics which interact to the detriment of the African American community instructive. Their relative lack of concern with changing the structural nature of the community leads to additional problems while not solving the original ones. Then the quote here in the middle by Massey and Denton, it said they are certainly correct when they contend the effect of segregation on Black well-being is structural, not individual. Residential segregation lies beyond the ability of any individual to change. It constrains Black life chances, irrespective of personal traits, individual motivations, or private achievements. For the past 20 years, this fundamental fact has been swept under the rug by policymakers, scholars, and theorists of the urban underclass. Segregation is the missing link in prior attempts to understand the plight of the urban poor. So he's talking about also structural segregation, residential segregation, and how they purposely, of course, placed us in the ghettos, placed us in areas that were underpoverished, you know what I mean, and made sure they kept us away from the big factories and shit like that we couldn't get to so we could work at, and things like that they've always done. Other means of segregation besides just segregating us or being racist per our skin. It was for everything. Racism applied to everything. From where we live to what we eat to how much it costs to everything. What you holding up, brother? We can't.
Yeah, the color of law.
The color of law. Yes.
Color of law.
Yeah, that breaks it down.
Everything you breaking down, you're saying right now, Sister Lily, is right here in this book, and it breaks down the segregation.
I'm about to buy that book right now. What's the author again?
His name is Richard Rothstein. I just bought it on audiobook because I like audiobook as I work. Just in case I can't get the reading. But this is definitely. I was listening to it prior to the start tonight, and because it kind of speaks about what the book is written about, what Barbara Wilson was saying, and you'll be amazed how they use segregation to keep us economically poor and keep our neighborhoods destroyed, and not giving us at least the ability to financially dig ourselves out of it. And it was basically by plan. So I like the way the author gave us the laws and policies so we can definitely understand what was going on. Barbara Wilson definitely been on point as usual, giving us the lessons in this chapter as well.
I'm definitely about to get it. They got it on PDF.
Yes, they do have it on PDF.
I can't stand PDF. Oh, have mercy.
And they also have it, like I said, I have it on audio book. So
now, Brother T, I had to you stacking my books now, man. You know, I had to go and order this now. This last week. Yeah. And I went and got it. You know, I went and got it. So I'm gonna dig into it. I have like 2 other books I want to pick up this week.
I wanted to bring a point.
And I'm gonna start digging into this.
I wanted to bring a point. That book there. Remember last week we talked about the Bank of America.
Right.
Bank of America was used to be called, and you'll see in the opening pages of that book, Dr. Maat, that the Bank of Italy. So when Italian immigrants came here, they had the Bank of Italy to help them get out the economic ruins. It funded their community, and when they became socially white, the bank transformed into Bank of America. So remember how our banks are used supposed to be used for us to to help with funding, help with economic inclusion. And
absolutely,
they talked about a bank that was in North Carolina that's supposed to help the community, but since the community cannot become economically in order to use it, it changed its name to service everyone. So we have to make sure that we have our banks utilized to serve us, just like Italy did for its community. So that author definitely brings that up also, and it just make a point how Barbara Wilson also mentioned it in our last chapter. So that we had to have
I'm looking forward to it,
economic mechanism in order to help us, go to the next level.
Absolutely, but I'm looking forward to digging in the book, Brother T. Like definitely, and I'm going to get the Color of Law. I bet you I'll have that. I'll probably shoot to everyone's place and grab that tomorrow. And there's another book that I want called Black Anglo-Saxon. I forgot the name of the author. I want to say his name is Ethan Hare,
I just grabbed When Affirmative Action Was White as well.
Right.
Audiobook.
I was just getting ready to suggest that, When Affirmative Action Was White.
Yeah.
Wow. We got it. It's coming. It's coming.
It just goes on. I just get these books because it definitely helps with what we're reading now, because it helps, because the Bible Wilson is basically mentioning it. So these books are basically just side references, you know, if you would say, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sister Camille.
Yes, sis.
Let's go to 507.
507. The African American, what I did have was the bottom of page 506.
I mean 507. Oh, you had 506. Go ahead, sis.
The last paragraph. Okay, while the ability of the white community to disorganize and constrain the lifestyles of the African American community lies beyond the ability of an individual, family, individual community, institution, or subculture to change them, they do not lie beyond the ability of the African American community as a nation joined in a worldwide alliance of African nations to change. It is this fundamental fact that has been swept under the rug by policymakers, scholars, and theorists. The concept of nation is the missing link in prior attempts to understand the plight of the African American community as a whole, not just its urban poor.
Sister Camille, let me jump in if you don't mind.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I had made a note here, right where it says at the bottom of 506, they do not lie beyond the ability. I wrote down, there is hope for us. All this that's going on, if we do begin to look at ourselves, like he's preaching here about a nation with, you know, to use our nation, look at ourselves as a nation, you know, we can change this. And I think Dr. Maat said it earlier, somebody said it earlier, use this segregation time as a positive. You feel me? Use it as a positive. Don't, you know, sometimes we preach, you know, we want inclusion. We want to be included in the multicultural thing. They don't want us, period. So why don't we just, you know, focus on, you know, our talents and our own resources and make it happen. And to borrow a quote by Dr. Wade Nobles, he said, we're so conceptually incarcerated, you know, that we fall for the okie doke every single time. But
right.
I think there is hope. I'm glad Dr. Wilson put that in there, that they do not lie beyond the ability of the African American community as a nation joined in a worldwide alliance. So we got to make that happen.
Okay, African American community as a de facto third world nation. The destinies of individuals, families, subgroups, and subcultures. Where am I here? The destinies of individuals, families, subgroups, and subcultures in the African American community are not only constrained by the structural characteristics of the white American dominated society, but are also more immediately constrained by their own self-determinable structural characteristics. That is to say, even as a subordinate community, the African American community has several degrees of freedom at its disposal within which it could transform its socioeconomic structure and thereby markedly increase the economic and social well-being of its constituents, as well as increase its socioeconomic power as a whole. However, such benefits can only occur through the formulation and enactment of nationwide, nationally administered and coordinated initiatives. Furthermore, such initiatives can only be realized by an African American community whose individual constituents self-consciously perceive themselves as members of an African nation in America and who behave in accord with that perception. I found that very powerful. And, you know, just dealing with the mindset of the kind of mindset we have to prosper and also to heal as a people and to work with one another.
Right, we said that.
A lot of us don't. Yeah, a lot of us don't really understand the sickness, that we've been, that we've had for hundreds of years. So, a lot of us in denial. So when you bring up these kind of points, a lot of people just kind of deny it and say, no, we're not like that. Or, I don't think it's that, But I mean, you've been doing the same thing for like 400 years, basically.
I seen a post by Sister Lily about the Black History Month. And, it's something because you can tell those who are still whitewashed in their mind that they, soon as Black History Month come along, they jump on board. But, this is every day, is what we should be striving to unify and promote our own, if you will. But you're right, that last sentence there, to me, was powerful. And we was talking about, even if some do support, the Black-owned businesses or whatever, it still has to be a Black consciousness. That's what I'm talking about. Your mind should be Black, not just throw a couple dollars, at the Black business,
Well, right. That's what you can have millionaires, but they still participate in white supremacy because they don't have a Black mind. So it does nothing to help the group as a whole. That you have a few 200,000 millionaires or whatever, because then their mindset is not African centered.
Hello.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
Good evening. And I came a little late. This is Chaos. And I notice every time of this month that I see some people exempt Blackness, Afrocentrics, but it only is temporary for 29 days. And after the month, they go back to sleep. And let's say, Cartridge did not help develop this 1 week holiday back 80 some years ago for people to just look at just on a temporary. It should be a regular history and ongoing taught on an everyday basis while progressing on other things. Because other nations, they never forget their history, much less forget anything. But when it comes to us, we follow everybody and we fall to the trap said, forget about all the past. But no, it's creeping up. The past was just yesterday, and today is the past and all that stuff. They're all entwined, past, present, and the future.
I agree with you, brother. Hey, brother, I don't know if you have a Brother Chaos. I think you have, I don't know if you have the YouTube on or what, but whenever your mic is unmuted, like whoever's talking, that I can hear that person. But I did want to just I hear it now. Like when your mic is unmuted, I hear myself talking. So I don't know if you have like another device on or if you have the YouTube video playing.
No, not right now. I have my computer on. I had to stop from the computer because for some reason it's too slow with the bandwidth, so I use the tablet. So do you hear echo right now?
Oh, okay.
Do you hear anything right now?
No, yeah. I actually hear myself.
Okay, good. So when I speak, I'll mute my mic.
All right, no problem. But I wanted to say, brother, I agree with you that Black history is 365.
Right.
And there's a group of people who just teach their children history for 28 days. European children, European American children get fed their history day in and day out. They're always fed their greatness. They always get that every day. They're told about, they have European cultural icons they learn about day in and day out. Dr. Knight that in his book, Know Thyself, and how the Black children, they only are exposed to their cultural icons for, 28 days out of the year. And you can imagine what that does to the Black child psychologically and emotionally. So anyway, but moving on. Yeah, but moving on, because this is short, so we don't want to. Go ahead, Sister Camille.
The bottom of page 507. No, rather, I'd like to finish the next paragraph. The power, the power of the concept of nation as an analytical instrument used to arrive at a practical understanding of problems faced by the African American community can be demonstrated by applying it in the analysis of a broad range of social problems. For example, the basic cause of institutional underperformance and or dysfunctionality, e.g. inadequate educational, recreational, socialization institutions, lack of employment opportunities, family instability and disruption, inadequate housing, antisocial, criminal behavior, individual distress and dysfunctionality can in insignificant part be traced back to the general state of the African American community considered as a nation. For this litany of problems which afflicts the national Black community may in large measure be said to reflect the disorganization of the Black American economy.
That's right.
Woo, that was a mouthful. More specifically, if the African American community were perceived as a nation, it would become immediately apparent that its fundamental problem, like many other African nations which present similar problems, is its national debt. Like other African nations, it suffers a net outflow of monetary and human resources. It is unable to retain for any reasonable length of time hard currency reserves within its borders. Its economic infrastructure is dominated by alien business establishments, which siphon its wealth. It is by far more indebted to outside communities than to its own internal establishment, and as a result, suffers a chronic liquidity crisis. It suffers from infrastructural problems, poor highways, streets, industrial facilities, housing, police protection, which hamper its economic growth potential and attractiveness to investors. It suffers an overwhelming trade deficit with other communities, meaning it buys far more from other communities than it sells to those communities. That it retains for itself far less of what it earns from other communities than what other communities earn from it and retain for themselves. And
so this is what that looks as. And right here, I do want to read this little paragraph right here. I actually have an asterisk next to it. It says, any cursory review of economic history reveals that nations which suffer the problems we have just listed, i.e., whose flow of monetary and human resources is grossly imbalanced, ultimately suffers social and economic dysfunctionality and disorganization as a result thereof. Breakdowns in social civility, law and order, increases in criminality, family disruptions, drug addiction, disease and death, and a host of other political, economic, social, psychological problems. Moreover, these nations are likely to be exploited, if not colonized by stronger nations. So I have an asterisk next to that. So he says that the Black American nation, this is at the bottom of 508 family, the Black American nation also must review and revise its domestic and foreign trade and industrial policies in order to maintain and enhance its power, influence, and quality of life vis-a-vis other nations. So vis-a-vis, that means national and international ethno-cultural groups in both the national and world communities. So he's saying that we got to look at this and revise. We got to look at our current situation and revise our domestic and foreign trade policies so that we can maintain and enhance. I would say enhance, because I don't know what people would be maintaining. So I would absolutely say that we would have to enhance our power and influence and our quality of life. At the top of page 509, because I want to work this section so we can get to the bullets. Economic market is completely accessible. In the previous chapter, Dr. Amos Wilson talked about that, how we don't have control over our internal markets. He emphasized that in chapter 20. So it says that the African American economic market is completely accessible. It's open and free to all other ethnic groups. And we see that.
That's right.
In the Black community, you always have foreigners there, you know, whether it's the Arabs, it may be whites, it may be Asians. But if you go out to the predominantly white communities, you don't see a bunch of Black owned and operated businesses. You go out to the Asian communities, you don't see Black owned and operated businesses.
They're not going to have that.
Absolutely. So we don't have control over our internal market. So he says that our economic market is accessible. He said it's open and free to all. He says while African American businesses are frozen out, not only of the markets of these groups, but are frozen out of its own ethnic markets by other groups, thus creating the crippling trade deficits or imbalances from which the community suffers. He says that massive sums of money are therefore repatriated, i.e., taken out of the Black community daily, without circulating within the community once before flowing out to economically benefit other communities. So I don't know if you guys have anything left on 509. I wanted to kind of get to these bullets down the bottom that Sister Alina was talking about.
Before we go there, just one comment I wanted to make, like, more of a question. Do people have business? I mean, will there be more Black business where there's more Black home ownership, or just Black people living in a certain area?
That's a good point. And I think it should be more Black
answer that
geared towards I hear myself. Okay. I think it would make sense that okay, Queen. I think it makes sense that the Black businesses, brother, would be built around areas where there's Black ownership, where people are buying homes, because in my opinion, it doesn't make sense for us to try to set up our businesses in places that we don't own. Because if everyone is just renting or whatever, you know, we don't own that area. So that essentially the point would be to try to develop a community, a actual real community, but we want to own everything in that damn community, just like white people and Asian people do.
Yes, absolutely. That's the way to insulate your community.
That's
because
right.
If you don't own it, then they could just shift you around like they do.
That's right, Queen. Exactly. We want to have complete control.
It's almost like, would you remodel the kitchen, bathroom, and make a finished basement in a rented home?
Right. That's not a good investment.
Right. That's just a question. Thanks for the answers, Queen.
That's a good question, brother. So what you want to do, Queen? You want us to take 2 bulletins apiece?
Do you want to move on to the bullets, Sister Aline? The advantages of a African American nation, and we kind of all just take 1 or 2 bullets. All right, I'll
start it off. The advantages the African American community may gain by perceiving itself and acting as a nation are many. They include the following: the creation and continuity of an African-centered and socioeconomically unified community, the development of a nationally unified and well-coordinated African American controlled market, economic and financial infrastructure.
The increased employment of African Americans within the community, increased business ownership both within and outside of the community, the use of African American business and consumer clout to increase employment and business opportunities in both the larger national and international markets. The ability of the African American community to speak with one voice to other communities and nations. That is very important.
Yes.
Oh yeah. The political empowerment of the community resulting from its economic empowerment and the use of its increased power to influence U.S. foreign and economic policy in favor of the economic and technological development of the African nations around the world. The enabling of the African American community to expand its domestic markets and open them to trade with African nations, and to use its political clout to open the larger U.S. markets to the importation and sales of African manufactured goods and other goods and services within the country.
The enabling of the African American community to enter into the trade relations with African and other nations, to market its products and services abroad, and most importantly, to lead in the development of the global Pan-African economic system to rival that of Europeans, Asians, Hispanics, and others. The enhancement of the ability of the Pan-African world to defend its economic and political interests and to protect its population from the military predation of other nations.
The enhancement of national and international African self-esteem, self-respect, and the marked reduction of antisocial behavior, criminality, and other social and physical problems in African communities, both at home and abroad. Brother Chaos, you want to read that last one, bro?
No, do I have echo, bro?
You good? You sound good right now.
Yeah. You might have to move on because I didn't put my book on me right now. I'm trying to take care of this technical issue.
The development, I got you. The development of financial and social institutions, which enhance the overall viability of the African worldwide community.
Yes. Some good bulletins there, family.
Yeah, for real.
Absolutely. Very deep. So then he goes on to talk about the economic proposal to the African American community. And he starts with mentioning W.E.B. Du Bois, his book called The Dusk of Dawn, an essay toward an autobiography of a race concept. Has anyone read this book? I've never read it.
I've never read it. I've heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't even heard of it.
Of W.E.B. Du Bois books. After finding out about the brother, I don't really invest too much time, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but he says that particularly he mentions chapter 7 titled The Colored World Within. He says he speaks about the American economic system directly and begins the chapter thus. He says, not only do white men, but also colored men forget the facts of the Negro's double environment. The Negro American has for his environment not only the white surrounding world, but also, and touching him usually much more nearly and compellingly, is the environment furnished by his own colored group. There are exceptions, of course, but this is the rule. So he's saying that the Negro lives in a double environment, which is true today, just as true today as it was when he wrote this book, that we do live in a double environment. I don't have anything else highlighted on page 511. Does anyone else have anything?
No.
Yeah, it just at the bottom where he says that I have the American economic class structure, that system of domination of industry and the state, income and monopoly, he said is breaking down. He says not simply in America, but in the world. He says we have reached the end of an economic era which seemed but a few years ago and eternal. He said, we have lived to see the collapse of capitalism. So, Brother T, I was going to ask you about this. I don't know when he wrote this book, but I know that he existed. I think Du Bois was what, the 1920s, 1930s, somewhere there?
He was around, yes. If I'm not mistaken, he was around the same time as Marcus Messiah Garvey.
Yeah, him and Booker T, early 1900s.
Yeah.
Okay. So he said here, when he wrote this book, he said that we have lived to see the collapse of capitalism. So is he talking about like the Great Depression? Because I want to put this in its historical context. So what is he talking about right here with the collapse of capitalism? Is he talking about?
He was actually in 511. You see where again, to compliment Bubba Wilson's vocabulary, if you see it says in an extreme prescient statement. I had to look that up, sis. I'm not as smart as y'all, but he was talking about
words all the time.
But extremely.
I look them up.
Damn right. That's why we know so many, because we look them up.
I know that's right. I know that's right. I got them in parentheses. How I can understand them, but that word means visionary. So. W.E.B. was actually making a visionary statement at that particular time. And it's powerful because this is exactly where we are today. We can see the collapse of capitalism. I got a lot of noise in the background, my son, so I'm going to go ahead and mute. But that's what he was talking about.
About something that was happening then. He was saying, look, later on, I see that we'll be witnessing this. So this was like a Sister Lane, what's the word I'm looking for, sis? Not a premonition, but it's another word.
Premonition.
Not premonition, not prediction. That's the word I'm looking for, sis.
I mean, yeah, in essence.
There's no more premonition.
Okay, got you. So this was like his prediction, his premonition. This is not something he was saying that was happening back then, right?
Because it's definitely not in capitalism.
Right.
Yeah, because
it's not happening now either, really. So.
Right.
But absolutely. Okay.
One thing I want to ask. if he wrote about us at the end of capitalism, the biggest question is end of capitalism to whom and what? Because last time I checked, there are no really serious black capitalists. Last time I checked, the only people that quit the capitalism was the European male.
Well, one thing.
So I'm not sure what illusion during the time Du Bois was living that he feels that it's going to end during some point of time. It's still growing, and it's got even more capitalists.
Right, but you understand.
And want to be capitalists.
Well, let the brother answer your question.
Okay, thank you. What one thing you understand about W.E.B. Du Bois is that he understood the plight that we was facing at that time in that era. So he always spoke of the African American demise when it comes down to our communities and how we are not yet part of the structural economic system. So he always talked of our neighborhoods, how we're faring when it comes down to the wealth. One of the I think the opening quote to the book, Sister Dr. Maat that you just received.
Yeah.
He talked. If you could open that book, can you open the book, please, to the first chapter and read that quote? Because that talks about what.
You want the introduction or the actual first chapter?
First chapter. I'm sorry, I didn't memorize the quote, but if you read that, that would kind of speak about what you're speaking of right now.
He says, "Slavery, Americans' original sin."
Is that the quote by W.E.B. Du Bois?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. That's the first chapter. The first chapter is called 40 Acres or a Savings Account. So then if you go then he begins with, in the introduction, he begins with a quote from Martin Luther King in the introduction. And then first chapter, a quote by James Madison. So is it like the second chapter?
Okay, I missed the sister. So I got there's a quote. But anyway, we'll come to the later. But the point I'm trying to make is that he focused on exactly where we were. And he understood that capitalism was no friend of ours because we were locked out. So this for him to say that, to see the collapse of capitalism, is basically understanding that capitalism is no friend of ours because we are locked out the economic structure in order for us to really make men. So that quote, I believe it was in that book, kind of spoke of that. So, but I can't find it right now, so we'll move on.
Oh yeah, we get it. So I just wanted to make sure, because when he mentioned, he said we have lived to see the capital. So he's speaking, futuristically. It says in Europe and in Europe and in the United States, as well as in Russia, the whole organization and direction of industry is changing. We are not called upon to be dogmatic as to just what the end of this change will be and what form of new organization will take. But what we are sure of is the present fundamental change. All right. He says, there faces the American Negro, therefore, the problem of combining into one object two difficult sets of facts. His present racial segregation, which despite anything he can do will persist for many decades, in his attempt by carefully planned and intelligent action to fit himself into the organization which the world faces. So it says, thus Du Bois recognizes that the racial segregation of African Americans would persist, logically propose that we proceed to use it as a method of progress, that instead of letting this segregation remain largely a matter of chance and unplanned development and allowing its objects and results to rest in the hands of the white majority or in the accidents of the situation, it would make segregation a matter of careful thought and intelligent planning on the part of the Negroes. So then he moves on page 513 to say that the American Negro must remember that he is primarily a consumer. We are the biggest consumer on the planet Earth, really. It says that he becomes a producer. It must be at the demand and the control of organized consumers and according to their wants. Today, we work for others at wages pressed down to the limit of tomorrow. We may work for ourselves, exchanging services producing an increasing proportion of goods which we consume, and being rewarded by a living wage and by work under civilized conditions. This will call for self-control to a degree, but not completely. This is a program of segregation. We are now segregated largely without reason. He says, let us put reason and power beneath this segregation. So Baba Wilson, Baba is like reiterating, a lot of things that he's saying previously, and he's using the words of W.E.B. Du Bois to back up his, his thoughts. Look, there's going to be self-control.
That's right.
And let's use this as an instrument, But it says, thus, as we may infer from the foregoing proposal, Du Bois clearly perceived that the capture and control of its internal markets in conjunction with utilizing its potential as a major consumer group in its own interest could get American community to wield considerable power and influence in the United States. So that's all I have, family, for page 513. Does anyone want to add anything before we move on?
No, Queen.
Brother Tawola, as you know, Brother Tawola say, hold up, I got something to say. Brother Mpu?
I don't.
All right. So page 514, Sister Alima, do you have anything, sis?
Not really. Sister Camille?
Just the bottom. I had the last paragraph. And for that reason, they may be tempted to reject but a necessary approach to the salvation of our national community and its constituent peoples. That Du Bois was aware such opposition would occur, and yet we must pursue this course is clear in his discussion of this possible fact in Dusk of Dawn. There are unpleasant eventualities which we must face even if we succeed. For instance, if the Negro in America is successful in welding a mass or large proportion of his people into groups working for their own betterment and uplift, they will certainly, like the Jews, be suspected of sinister designs and inner plotting, and their very success. Yeah. I
have it highlighted right here. I have W.E.B.
Read that again?
Yeah, you got to read that against this.
There are unpleasant eventualities which we must face, even if we succeed. For instance, if the Negro in America is successful in welding a mass or large proportion of his people into groups working for their own betterment and uplift, they will certainly, like the Jews, be suspected of sinister designs and inner plotting, and their very success and cultural advance be held against them and used for further and perhaps fatal segregation. And that is that's been our problem. Every time we've built something, it was attacked. And then also Black people are also shamed into not wanting to like making it seem like it's bad for us to work together and build our own businesses and to be self-interested. And that's one of the tactics.
Absolutely,
sis. They try to shame us into that. And I'm always battling the dominant culture people because I'm very vocal about that stuff, especially when they say crazy stuff. I just let them have it, and yeah. So let me get back to the paragraph.
Yes, that's a deep paragraph. Du Bois is going. Yeah.
There is, of course, the villain minority group may be opposed to the best interests of a neighboring or enveloping or larger group, or even if it is not, the larger and more powerful group may think certain policies of a minority are inimical to the national interests. The possibility of this happening must be taken into account, and we've dealt with that many, many times. That's why we don't have any communities, or we don't have any buildings, or any infrastructure.
And sis, that's what's going on now. With the whole Black extremists. Was it BIE? So Black. Help me out. What's the acronym for? Black Intelligent Extremists.
No, Black Identity
BIE.
Extremists.
Right.
Black
so
identity.
Just the fact that you're trying to better yourself, you become a target. Just trying to improve your life, you know, and you not accept the crumbs that they want us to take, you know,
absolutely,
or let them, you know, mold us into some animals, you know, that they use their propaganda for.
Absolutely, and remember when the Panthers were on the scene,
it's very.
It was
I was aware.
When the Panthers were on the scene, sis, it was communism. Remember they were saying, you know, it's outside agitation, and it was a communist.
Any of those groups. That's why. Yeah, well, that's why they smashed them.
Absolutely,
you know, it didn't matter that, you know, they don't want you to be productive. They want to be able to control you. They can't control you if you're productive. They can't use you for food, you know, if you're organized.
No, they can't suck on your blood. That's what they want.
Right. Yeah, they want to use you for food.
Understand. They don't understand your natural enemy. He is a parasite by nature.
Right.
A leech. He has to feed on you. That's just all major, because that's why people understand. Say you integrate with him, it's going more further feed him till he sucks the blood out you, time in and time after. And one other thing I want to say is this. Since you mentioned this, it lets me think. Say, you know, well, all that's going around in America, particularly and outside America, which chalets are not familiar with. They call it up here BIE, Black Identity Extremists. Well, I'm hearing from another source, especially in Africa, Pacific Kenya, they try and create a different label over there called I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's something to deal with black, but it's not identity. It's black something extremists, where they deal with the Kenyan because Kenyan follow Islam that they want to achieve, and they're masculine. I think it's called Black Masculine Identity Extremists. So, you know, what they run test runs here in America, they try to bring it across the continent, Africa, to the ones that are very masculine and achievers. So this is a global situation they're trying to set up, you know, because black people right now in America are not doing much right now. So they only create these labels to cause any fear and confusion to the populace of people that want to respect and love themselves, which black people should love and respect themselves anyway.
Right.
Screw what the hell everybody else saying. I mean, I was gonna cuss. Screw that. You know? Don't worry about it. You gotta keep striving. But let's continue.
Looks like we the wire right now. I mean, that was anything else for the bottom of oh yeah, I had something. No, Sister Camille, did you want to say something, sis?
I was gonna say down at the bottom, like you were saying. I mean, if you want to take it. But I had the bottom paragraph. The proposals we make here are very familiar because they are very American in their essence. The only thing radical about them is the application to and by Americans, by Black Americans.
That's right.
These proposals follow the pluralistic traditions of the United States, where ethnic groups and regional groups have in pursuing their economic and political interests come to enhance their general well-being and to exercise power and influence in the country, and by so doing contributed to the well-being of the nation and its exercise of power and influence in the world at large. Right. It is our sincere hope that anti-Black racism will portion of the African and white American population to the overall beneficiary effects which may flow from the broad expansions of African American economic and political power. If white America vigorously and mistakenly opposes and political of the African American community in its pursuit of the American way of success, then the hypocrisy of white America will be plain for all to see, and the American nation will ultimately suffer the consequences of its false pretensions. And
absolutely, sis. And I was right there.
They are opposed to us, you know, having anything or even having anything of our own.
Absolutely. And Dr. Amos Wilson on this page is saying, look, you know, even when we began like a do for self, when we began to do for self or adopt a self-help mentality, he's saying in no way is this anti-American. He's saying, in fact, he said a fully employed Black American, right? A Black America, he said a physically and socially healthier Black America unplagued by poverty, disease, drug addiction, miseducation, violence, and criminality disrupted families. He said a Black family, he said a Black America characterized by high self-esteem, self-love, acceptance, self-knowledge, and high productivity cannot be but a blessing and a boon to the American society. He said, into the greatness of America as a nation among great nations, right? A Black America that's unoppressed is America's greatest secret weapon in its struggle for economic survival and supremacy. But they don't view it like that, right?
Nope. Because they want it all.
Absolutely.
They want to,
absolutely.
They're not into sharing power. You know, they're not.
Absolutely.
All that stuff that they wrote in the Constitution or whatever other, the Bill of Rights and all that kind of stuff, that's a bunch of, that's for manifest destiny of white people. It's not meant, it wasn't never meant for, you know, other people. And where they messed up was they're like the only country that wrote something like that. So, you know, every time people, you know, when they discriminate against, they start, you know, quoting all the stuff about America being a place for immigrants and da 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 da. But you know, that's not really what it's meant for. And you know, a lot of people fall gullible for that. You know about spewing that kind of stuff because it's not for you, and it sets you up for, you know, failure.
Absolutely. But at the bottom of, I'm on page, at the top of page 516, the last paragraph. He's going on to say that they, you know, in the subsequent chapters, he's going to out proposals for African American economic empowerment. But he says before doing so, it requires an examination of the demographic distribution of the population and how its dispersal across the country, because you know we're everywhere, family. Dispersal across the country may be utilized as the basis for the development of a national economy as ministered by local, regional, and national organizations. You know, he said he's going to be talking about this in the next chapter, chapter 22. So next week, family, we will be discussing chapter 22. This is a long chapter. It's only 37 pages, but you know, with Dr. Amos Wilson, you know, 37 pages is like 64 pages or 74 pages. You got to kind of double it up with Dr. Amos Wilson. But you know, I definitely think that we can get through it. What do you think, Sister Alima? I mean, I think we can get through it. 37 pages. Yeah, so we'll just go through it. I see a lot of charts. I'm looking at page 537 through, oh my God, 537 through 541. You know, a lot of charts of where we're located, our numbers and stuff. So I think it'll be a pretty interesting chapter. So we'll knock this out next week. But I just want to close up, not even really close up, but somebody's phone. But just to close up. So Dr. Amos Wilson is saying in this chapter that, look, we need to conceive of ourselves as a nation within a nation. And throughout these chapters, so we've gone through 21 hours. And throughout these chapters, he's emphasized a few things. He's emphasized, you know, creating a strong culture, a culture in which we have a strong identity, a strong ethnicity, a strong group consciousness, a socialization process, right? That teaches us these things, you know, racial solidarity, all of which are cultural products, okay? He emphasizes organization, coordination, cohesiveness, you know, on the family level, on the community level, on the national, and on the international level. He stresses group economics throughout these chapters, pulling our human and material resources together to establish his businesses of our own, hire our own people, you know, on a local, national, and international level, right? He talks about, you know, our buying power and how when we spend our money, we need to spend our money without interest. He also provided us with a cursory review of how other groups of people ascend to economic supremacy. He talked about that. I believe that was in the chat. I believe that it was chapter 14, race and economics. Not sure. I've got to go back and check it out. He also emphasized us using our economic power to influence and shape domestic and foreign policies for the benefit of the Pan-African community. He also taught us the basis of social power. Last chapter, he talked about the economic worldview, the European economic worldview that is currently dominating us. So when I tell you guys that this really is a blueprint for Black power, if only we would take heed and implement, you know, what our ancestor, this manuscript that he's left us, because this is really the blueprint for Black power. Prior to reading this book, I knew some things, but I didn't know as much as I know now. And I you know, I don't even profess to know a lot, but you know, this book was definitely an eye opener. And I would love to see this book, you know, implemented, you know, on a collective level, not just, you know, again, like he said, individual groups, you know, trying to make it happen. But we as a collective, you know, if we applied the ideas and concepts presented in this book, we would be unstoppable. So with that said, I look forward to reading chapter 22 next week. Does anyone have any closing words? I'm talking about for the chapter. Of course, we want to shout out our work, but does anyone have anything else to say about Blueprint for Black Power?
One thing I would like to say, y'all did talk about Nathan and Julian Harris. Another book, if y'all can get a hold of, if it's still available. And I think they stopped reprint this back in '93. It's called The Endangered Black Family, Coping with the Unsexualization and Coming Extinction of the Black Race. This was published in '84, 34 years ago. That was one of the few, I don't know, last books that Nathan and his wife did back then. But that's an excellent read. There's some jewels they dropped historically that took place during this country during the late 70s, 80s. That's in this book. And like I said before, the Blueprint Black Power, I mean, I think I learned pretty much a lot from this book. In this group, this book Ram Club, that I did not know if I sit down myself and really took the time to read the whole entire 800 or 900-page book. And it's really stimulating to
absolutely, brother.
This should be more into this. This should be in schools, Black empowerment books. One of the top. It should be everywhere where Black children are at. Like anything, strategize, dissect it, understand it, you know, to make use of it in their lives, so we can see another generation that will power where we need to be in the future.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
this is a very powerful book, and I could see why it took Amos, I would say, more than 10 or more years to compile this book, because this book is a necessity and very needed now in the times we're in now. I think one thing I know, I was reasoning with a couple of people, and especially people from the island Jamaica, how the agents, because they put themselves in certain positions, are able to have the government sell out the country to a point where they come in very swiftly. Some rumors said probably another couple of years, they won't be surprised if some of the people in Jamaica start speaking Cantonese, you know, like everywhere else they put themselves. And one of the things like warfare, you have to change the language of people. And as evidence said, there's nothing that happened in the past. The past, present are all one and the same. History repeats itself. People notice. You think you're okay because your pain might not longer be in power. You must think again. The age is not going to be just any easier on us. They're going to probably turn it up more on us.
Right.
You know what, brother? I used to say stuff like, you know, history repeats itself. But then I had to ask myself, is history repeats itself, or is it that mentalities, thus behaviors, are passed down from generation to generation? So thus you see the same thing. You get what I'm saying? Like, you know, people be like, history repeats itself.
Yeah, that's but really more so what it is. It's the mentalities and the teachings that are passed down that make it repeat itself.
The same results. Yeah, you get the same.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So we're going to close on
Dr. Maat. You're right.
Yes.
You're right.
Just a sis, I got it right here.
Perceptions of a Misplaced African Family, Volume 1 is available at www.lililapoetespeaks.com. Just head on over to the shop, pick you up a copy, pick up some mail track. You can also head on over to www.pantherwear.com, pick up some Panther Wear, family. Check it out. Go and support your family, support your sister. Peace and love. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for the plug, Dr. Maat.
Oh yeah, I keep the book right next to me. So as the sister said, pick you up some Meltrek. Pick it up, DVDs are so antiquated. I mean, I'm grateful that people still order the DVDs, but if you don't like DVDs, it is available for digital download on our website, okay? So some people say, oh, Doc, you selling DVDs, it's antiquated, it's dated, but you can go to Ed Anime Productions or go to lily.poetespeaks.com to pick up your copies of Meltrek. If you're in the Baltimore area, you can shoot down Everyone's Place, or you can go right to the website at animeproductions.com. We have over 21 or 25 distributors, you know, on our website. So if you want to see if there's someone near you who sells it, go to animeproductions.com. If you don't understand what I mean, animeproductions.com, just go to Google, type in Meltrek, and our website will pop up. But you'll find, and you can find a store near you who sells Meltrek. All right, we got to teach the baby our history, our culture, and our achievements. We also have coloring book that goes along with the Meltrek episode 1 DVD. In 2 weeks, we actually just submitted the Meltrek episode 1 storybook for printing. So we'll get our first sample back this Friday, and hopefully if we like it, we'll get, 1,000 copies printed up by next week, so then that'll be available. And it actually it provides children with more details and more information than the actual film. So go to Ed Anime Productions, support, pick up Meltrek. Peace.
I want to donate.
Black Power family. My name is Camille Gaynor Jones. It's an honor to be here. Looking forward to chopping it up on the next chapter. Again, I'm a drummer, professional drummer, and the content of our music that we have today is very troubling. Music was a very uplifting thing for us back in the day, and it kept us on point and together as a people. But our music has become controlled by the dominant culture, hence the type of message or lack thereof that's in the music. So I think we need to make sure we get our children involved in the arts, and because that's very it's opening to your mind. It teaches you to think critically and to use your creativity. Absolutely. So with that being said, I have my CD, entitled "The Girl from Queens," and I have it in instructional DVD entitled "The Adventures of Drum." I've done a lot of my systems and styles of playing, particularly all the styles that were created by. Matter of fact, all styles that are in America were created by blacks, by black African people. And don't let anyone else tell you anything different, no matter if they're dominated by other people. That's right. We were the creators of them. And another note for Black history that I like to post is that the African American is the creator of the drum set, because of the music that the dominant culture called jazz. We could like to call it BAM, Black American music. But because of the style of music that we created, that is where we put all the drums together. Because when we were enslaved people here, they didn't allow us to have drums. But so we didn't have a hand drum tradition like a lot of other countries, like Brazil or Cuba or Jamaica, those kind of countries. So we put the drum set together, the stuff that we saw, lying around, snare drums, cymbals, things like that. We put all that stuff together, and one person played that, and that is what is part of the creation of music we call jazz. So just want to, give you that little tidbit. And I'd like to say ashe to the family, and thank you for coming and checking us out, and getting that knowledge. And peace and blessings. Love you all. Ashe.
After everyone finished up, at the brother Tawola and Chaos and Impu say their piece, I gotta play your outro. Gotta play the outro.
Oh yes.
I gotta play that. I gotta play that.
I gotta roll,
so go ahead, brother.
Family. I gotta roll. Peace and love to you all.
Peace and love.
Peace, Lee.
Peace and love. I'm brother Tawola, known as Brother T. I made a personal commitment for this month. My personal commitment is that I will have a physical copy of Sister Alima's book in my possession, that I will have a physical copy of both of Sister Camille's works, and I'm dedicating.
I gotta get it myself.
I am dedicating a mail track video to my daughter's school. My family has donated some polo shirts to the school for kids who have not able to dress in uniform. So one of my commitments is to make sure that we support each other in some form of fashion.
That's right.
For not just February, but for the rest of the year. So my commitment, I won't buy another book from another author until I have Sister Alima's book in physical copy. I have it in Kindle, but I want it in physical copy. I will not buy another book from another author until I have Sister Camille's CD and instructional video.
Yes.
I will not buy a pair of tennis shoes until I have a pair of Panther wear. So that's my commitment that I want to do, support this illustrious panel and all the works that you put into place. And I thank you all for being as diligent and caring about this African family, for putting this important works out. So I'll be remiss to not say that before I had my outro. And I thank you. I love you all. And I hope all have a wonderful week.
Love you too, Brother T.
Love you too, Brother T. Ashe. And appreciate you, brother. Brother Mpu?
Yeah, that was powerful, man. I'm gonna follow you. I'm gonna follow suit. I gave word to Dr. Maat in December that I was going to purchase, and I have not yet done that. But I do plan on doing that very soon. I totally share your sentiments on that, man. We definitely, especially getting all this confirmation from Baba Wilson concerning supporting our own, we definitely got to put that into action. It's always a pleasure to come on and share and to listen and to learn from you all. And I hope the audience is being enlightened by this information. I swear, between this is the Bible right here. Between you know, this other brother, John Jackson, Johnny. I forgot my brother, the ancestor's name. Shame on me.
John Henry Clark.
Thank you. Chancellor Williams too. Chancellor Williams. That's what I was thinking of too.
Oh yeah, that's bad book too.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
But you know, it's always, you know, enlightening, you know, and actually, Dr. Maat, this chapter here to me was powerful. We could have went in for another hour. I had to refrain myself today because it's just so much information that I want to implement and share with our brothers and sisters in our local community here, because this is definitely, we need to start somewhere. I mean, we made some progress, but there's definitely it's not even going to happen in our lifetime, unfortunately, but
I know.
Yeah, I don't think so. But we're learning the bricks.
Yeah, but you know what? I do feel like the ancestors, you know, are empowering us to carry on this awesome message, you know, that it is possible. You know what I'm saying? That there is hope. We gotta do some groundwork. You know, it's not gonna be pretty. You know, we're gonna be talked about, ostracized. You know, unfortunately, some may even, you know, be murdered or whatever because of what we're doing. You know, hopefully not this particular group, but I'm just saying this is a powerful, threatening work. You talking about unifying our people? What? You know, spending money on empowering each other? What? You know there's going to be some backlash, you know, because our people are so asleep, as somebody said it earlier. So, but Brother Mpu, Black Peace and Black Power family.
Peace and power, brother. Brother Chaos.
That before Brother Chaos go on this last thing, I did find it, Dr. Maat, that W.E.B. Du Bois quote, because we did talk about the ancestor today. To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in a land of dollars is the very bottom of hardships. And that is the
what page?
That's the opening quote on Simon the Page. Should be the first page of The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap.
Oh, you said when you said the first chapter.
Yeah.
So I went
well, I'm sorry. I read so much of the. I read a couple chapters of the book. I forgot where it was. I didn't. But
got you. That's deep. That's deep, bro. Okay. That's deep, bro.
For the chaos.
That's deep, bro. For real.
All right. You know, out of everything, a lot of people could be watching the so-called Super Bowl, but a lot of people that tune in see a more bigger, a more better picture in regards to our situation. Now I said no type of entertainment is going to get us out of our situation. We're going to have to put in some form of work down the line to get out. And, you know, it's going to take blood, sweat, wherever, but, you know, it needs to be done because, you know, it's not going to get any easier for us. And only when, as time progresses, you know, it will get difficult. It's going to get harder. And like Amos said, before his transition, he said that when students come to his class, he said he's not going to raise your anxiety because this alone is going to break you or make you a better person. If you're taking any social science course, like most people, even some of these social science like Nathan and Julius Harris, they'll say it themselves that, you know, if you feel comfortable, then obviously you are being lied to. You know, you gotta deal with reality facts, but that can get people.
All right, sis, I'm getting ready to play it. Tell me if you can hear it. Hold on. You sent me one voice. Want to make sure it says open with. Let some folks hear your work. One of these days, and you're walking along.
The resurgence of the African mind.
One of these days, and you're walking along. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and you're walking along. Resurgence of the African mind.
Good job, sister. Good job.
One of these days, and you're walking along.
Thank you.
Yeah. You hear
in the chat, he call it comedic funk. Dig it.
Comedic funk? Okay.
You know what? I like that.
Yeah,
comedic funk. I like that.
Awesome. I'm about to put that on the shirt.
I ain't playing. I'm brought out and I'll be like comedic funk, like a mug.
Yes.
Yeah, myself, yeah, we bringing that comedic funk.
Hey, son, net, no net.
Oh man, I got tracks for days.
Awesome.
I had did the Apollo yesterday, and I went over there to see. He wasn't out there yesterday. That was too cold. It was crazy. But woo!
Wow. Awesome.
One of these days, and it won't be long.
Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days.
Good to see him. Pass it to you.
That's that real funk. That's that real funk.
Yeah.
You gotta do like a intro video along with that.
Yeah, that's what I made it for.
That's awesome.
You know, we have an intro for the show. I'll make it. I'll master it and make it bang. I got to cut my teeth with a lot of the greats, from Run DMC to Public Enemy, and you know, I learned a lot of my skills from like the Bomb Squad, Davey DMX, and people like that. Yeah, so that's where I get my production skills from.
That's awesome.
Now, all right, family, we love you. Peace and power. See you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here, Resurgence of the African Mind Book Club. I don't know Sister Alima's line. She says, "Will we seek to liberate African minds with one unit of work at a time?" Pow! Peace, y'all.
Pow, pow. Click, click, boom.